The Romans are heading towards British shore, a plan already perceived by the Britons, who are trying to make it impossible for the Romans to land. The Romans are facing a crisis because their ships, due to their large size, can only be stationed in deep water, making docking almost impossible. The soldiers now realize they must jump from the ship in their heavy armor to meet their foe, and the Britons are on the shore waiting for the Romans to embark. Caesar observes this, and he immediately sends forward his ships of war. He orders ships to be discharged from the transport vessels towards the open flank of the enemy, which is now awestruck by the strange sight of these Roman ships. The enemy's awestruck works to the Romans' advantage, as they are able to attack the open flank with spears and slings, and the Britons retreat. Meanwhile, on the ships, Roman men are hesitating on whether to advance to shore due to their heavy armor and the depths of the sea around them. Caesar displays good leadership and bravery by saying, "Leap, fellow soldiers, unless you wish to betray your eagle to the enemy. I, from my heart, will perform my duties to the Commonwealth and my general." He proceeds to leap from the ship, which encourages other men to leap, so that they do not face disgrace of cowardice. When the other ships of soldiers see the men leap, they follow suit soon. Although bravery and stamina was displayed by both Britons and Romans, the Romans were thrown into deep confusion due to the fact they were trudging through shallow water and could not assemble into their usual standings to fight. The Britons, however, had a great knowledge of how to fight in shallow water, and were able to attack the Romans while they were thrown into confusion. Caesar immediately sends ships to help those in distress, and once all the soldiers assemble together, they make an attack on the Britons. Although the battle was a victory for the Romans, it lacks the usual success that Caesar is accustomed to. After the defeat, the Britons send ambassadors to Caesar to negotiate peace. They promise hostages and beg for peace, saying it had been their common people who had instigated war, not the officials. Hostages were soon agreed upon, and they sent their common people back into the country parts, thus completely surrendering themselves to Caesar. After this negotiation of peace, Caesar sends his 18 ships back to the mainland of Gaul, where their supplies of food are. But on the way of sailing back, a great storm comes by and disperses them among the sea. Some are sent back to the port which they had started. Others, in more dangerous situations, are situated in the lower part of the island. That night is a full moon, which unbeknownst to the Romans equates to high tides. The storm wrecks many of Caesar's ships, making it inevitable that they would be in Britain longer than they were supplied for. While this misfortune took place over the Romans, the Britons were observing. The chiefs of Britain held a meeting, and in this meeting they decided the best way to rid themselves of Romans and anyone who wanted to make war upon them was to snuff out the Romans by not allowing them to acquire provisions that they would need to sustain themselves in Britain. This plan would make it impossible for the Romans to sustain themselves in the Britons' homeland for much longer. Caesar perceives these ill-will feelings towards him and his men due to the lack of hostages that the Britons had promised to return. Caesar sends his men to retrieve corn from the countryside in order to feed them. With his wits, he orders men to use timber and brass from demolished ships to repair the remaining ones. With his plan following suit very well, Caesar thought they would be able to return to Gaul soon enough. While this is occurring, one of Caesar's legions have been sent out into the forest to scavenge for food. Soldiers on duty observe a large cloud of dust from where the legion headed. Caesar's suspicions are confirmed by this and immediately orders 2 cohorts that are on duty to march into the direction with him. When Caesar comes upon this legion, he finds his men in a ghastly state, barely able to hold their ground. The Britons had waited all night in the woods to attack the Romans with their chariots and cavalry. Their scattered position held an advantage against the Romans, which they were now closing in upon. Although the Britons may be barbaric in nature to the Romans, their way of fighting is just as superior. With daily trainings, they are high-class warriors prepared for any battle. The Britons' barbaric way of fighting with chariots is by closing in around all directions of their enemy and throwing their weapons upon them. This throws the enemy into confusion and makes them flee from their post. Once the enemy is thrown into confusion, they leap from their chariots to engage in battle upon foot. The charioteers then withdraw from the battle to a safe place, where if the enemy were to overpower them, their soldiers would have an easy escape route. This way of fighting made the Britons a formidable foe to the Romans. Caesar soon sends his legions back into their camp after it was inevitable they would not be winning this battle. The Britons depart from the fields, and passing storms soon come, making battle impossible for the next few days. During this pause of battle, the Britons send out messengers to all parts of their land, telling of the Romans' weakened state in Britain. They declare that this moment is of great opportunity to liberate themselves forever, and soon gather a large infantry of cavalry. And so, war pursues on.